Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about Aboriginal Australian sacred ecology, a topic that I admit to not being an expert on by any means, but I hope to do it justice because it's an incredibly complex concept that is often difficult for outsiders to understand. So hopefully, again, I do it justice, but within the many diverse communities of Aboriginal Australians across the continent of Australia, there is a concept of dreaming, or dreamtime as it's often translated into English, and this can be explained different kinds of ways, but it's sometimes as a time before, sometimes as kind of a time parallel to our own, a world in which there are beings such as Rainbow Serpent, such as two women sitting, who have had or are currently having effects upon the landscape, and so in our human world we see them as these landscape features, right? So as one example, there's a story of two women sitting, and that's actually a rock formation that was later, unfortunately, very much destroyed by a mining operation, and Aboriginal Australian people took this to court in Australia and did win some small amount of damages, but from their perspective, as Elizabeth Povinelli points out, this was a double homicide, not just sort of a destruction of a site, right? Because those really are two women sitting down. And so the Dreamtime kind of concept is very much one of an animate landscape, of one pervaded by these mythic beings, and I don't mean mythic as in fictional, I mean mythic as in the beings of sacred stories that are permeating the landscape in a very real way. So rather than continue to explain it probably pretty poorly, what I'd like to do now is actually watch a YouTube video where we're going to have some elders talk about this. But first, of course, what we need is an ad for Super Bowl or something.
Hi boys and girls, what we're doing today, we're talking about the Dreamtime and what it actually is. See, that's a very personal thing because there's 600 totally different Aboriginal tribes in Australia. So that means 600 languages and at least 3,000 plus dialects inside those languages. So if one Aborigine tells you that's a Dreamtime, well, that's his opinion, and there's many, many different versions. So to me, I guess I could say the Dreamtime is never ending. That's what happened in the past, how things came to be. That's what's happening now, and what is to happen in the future. A lot of people think the Dreamtime is how things were created, just like in other spiritual or religious beliefs. That's a good point too. You've got different stories. One that I can share with you is, and what I understand of the Dreamtime is how things came to be, is right at the start of creation, all the land, it was flat. And then out of the skies came what we call Gurria or Gurria, the Rainbow Serpent. And it was pregnant, or inside of its belly it had all of creation. And as it came down, first of all, it gave birth to the rivers and the lakes, and then it started creating the trees and the plants and eventually the animals, shaping the rivers, the waterways and the big mountains. And then eventually came the first human beings. And here to tell another version of what he thinks the Dreamtime story is my good friend and mentor, Tukabi.
Hello boys and girls, how are you today? That's good. We were all moulded in one part of the dreaming, or what we call the Juggerba. We were all moulded from the earth. And we all gave Wongan. We all got speech, or Lila. We were given a song. And with that song came the medicine, and the story for the country. And we believe that we come from the country because we were moulded, given birth from her. And when we finish up, or when we pass on, we go back to her. We become a part of her. So that's another way of talking about the dreaming. And the songs are very important. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. And when you sing all the songs, you're putting all the little jigsaw puzzle together. And it becomes a big map, and the map is Australia.
See, before you had compass or you had fancy things like GPS, you only had songs. Now, when you hear and see Aboriginal people dancing and telling their stories and singing, you could tell pretty much from whereabouts in Australia they're from. For example, Yamawe Warengai, Yamawe Ware, Yamawe Warengai. They are the melodies of the ocean and the mountains in far north Queensland. My people, because the landscape moves like that. So like my brother Turtle Tukabi was saying, inside of the songs you have information, and inside of the songs you might be told to stop here and make a camp. You might be told inside the songs that this is where you find food, this is where you find water, and this is where you find shelter. So if you know your language, then you know your song. If you know your song, you'll never get lost. You'll always find shelter, you'll always have food and water. So that is another small aspect of what the Dreamtime is. So now let's make sense of it all. This is a song from my grandma's people, and it's talking about Gurria, or Gurria, the Rainbow Serpent. And when I say the word Gunmali, it means to make. And I say Gunmali, Gabanyamba, we're going to make the sweet mother, because that's what most people's idea of the Dreamtime is, how things started. Look at any different religion, it always talks about how things came to be. Okay, so we're going to tell a story about the Rainbow Serpent creating everything. And here's my good friend Norm on what we call Yiraki, commonly known as the didgeridoo. Now, this is Tukabi's version of a different creation song from a different...
So as you can see then, there are profound effects upon how people see the landscape traditionally among Aboriginal Australian groups, and to some degree still today, of course. So thank you to the elders who shared that knowledge with us and that song with us. As Tukabi was saying, these traditional songs and stories not only enshrine the land with the sacredness that can really only come from this sort of concept of sacred beings having moved around the land, but also tells people where they are and sort of where their specific group belongs to. So this is a reconstruction. This is not sort of a present-day map. This is a historical reconstruction of Aboriginal Australian territories. It's not perfect, most likely, but it is probably remarkably accurate in the sense, or is probably more accurate than you'd think, because so much of these territories were determined by songs and stories. So long before there was the Australian national government, long before there was any sort of state form of society in Australia, for thousands upon thousands of years, people, in a sense, were governed by Dreamtime. People were governed, in large part, by stories and songs that gave them their specific territories. And so an entire continent of people were able to organize their territories, as they say, like a jigsaw puzzle. I liked that framing of it. I might actually also have us listen to this video. It's a good one as well. This was after the during the extreme wildfires that they had, as well as drought back in the end of 2019 in Australia, which you may remember. Pretty brutal. You may have read the stories of people's lives being so dramatically impacted by it, of course. You might have read the stories about koalas that were having their forests burned up. It was a really terrible time. And this was a ceremony that was held by UN Aboriginal Australian people at Mount Gulaga, where they took part in a ceremony. So traditionally, in Aboriginal Australian groups, there were these large dancing ceremonies that were done, often of which incorporated what outside observers would call totems. So some animal or other spirit that was significant to that specific clan and that they identified with. Indeed, that's foundational to Emil Durkheim's theory of religion, if you've ever had to study that one in one of your other classes, including my own. I won't make you study Durkheim right now, but let's watch this video a little bit about this modern Aboriginal Australian ceremony and what it meant for people on sort of an environmental level.
We're at the foot of our mother mountain, Gulaga. We gathered here for a big buna, what we call a corroboree. And it's one of the first biggest dances we held here on country for over 150 years. Today was about healing land, healing country, healing spirit and healing people.
As soon as this call out happened, if you know who you are, we understand our identity, there is no question but to answer that call and come out here and stomp for our mother. And it's just basically following suit of all our teachers, all our knowledge holders, and looking after our old people and ancestors. The tradition has never been lost, the protocols have never been lost, the law is all the same and it still exists within the land.
Which is a really remarkable statement given the time period in which they said that this specific ceremony, large ceremony, hasn't been done for them to say, you know, that law is still there, that knowledge.
When I dance, I feel my old people and I listen to the beats and mother's heartbeat. And yeah, it just brings healing to me and strengthens me. And I know if I'm feeling that, then everyone there with us is feeling the same. For me, dance is just, it's like you're just free, you're just out there, you're just free. You're feeling the dirt, you're feeling the earth, you're just loving it. You're just dancing on your mother's country.
Our old people have been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. It's a continuation, of building our identities and strengthening our young ones. This is what we need as Aboriginal people to keep us going and keep us strong.
Where we're at now is a very good place of healing and strength. And for our non-Indigenous brothers to come along and see how powerful we are and support us and learn from us, we're breaking down barriers.
Seeing all UN people come together was one of the most beautiful moments I've ever seen. The land's sick at the moment, so our people are sick. And if we can come together and dance together and not only heal our own spirits, the spirits in the land and our ancestors, but we can do it for the whole community. That's the true meaning behind our culture.
I like that video. I like that video a lot. And I was struck in that video by the close connection people were making discursively between their own health and the health of the land, as well as, the land and the ceremonies, their ancestors and the people. This sort of social and ecological is sort of woven together. and the land is sick and so are the people, which you get the sense that they're not just talking about it sort of the mechanistic sense of pollution that can cause people to be sick, but something perhaps deeper than that. So again, all of these are, I think, really good examples of the fact that religious views can certainly profoundly influence people's views of the environment, and Aboriginal Australians are certainly a fantastic example of that. I'm going to pause the video here before we shift gears.